the trust from the people is increasing with that. Fact and data is different thing.
I think the critical thinking is becoming more and more important.
Sasti.
Kita dari podcast Rembuk Nusa, langsung dari Tebet, yang diurus sama teman-teman ICT
Watch.
Oke, selamat siang semuanya. Semoga dalam kondisi sehat. Di sini kita udah kedatangan tamu, ada
Betul.
Mbak Astari dari Indonesia IGF yang aktif banget di urusan-urusan yang berhubungan dengan literasi digital, khususnya di Indonesia, Mbak ya? Nggak di negara lain ya?
Kan namanya juga IGF kan.
Oh,
IGF Indonesia, sebenarnya IGF-nya di seluruh dunia sih, di bawah PBB. It's
Ah.
under United Nation, but I represent Indonesia.
Wah, keren banget.
Oke, mantap.
Saya sangat merasa terhormat.
Langsung deg-degan ya?
Deg-degan saya dekat.
Sama orang PBB.
Orang
hati-hati.
PBB, iya.
So, bersama kita juga now together with us we have Frederick from SIDA. So Frederick, you might introduce yourself, also explain a little bit about SIDA.
Okay, my name is Fredrik Westerholm. I come from SIDA. SIDA is the Swedish, from Sweden, up north in Europe, Swedish International Development Agency, and we work with development assistance as well as humanitarian assistance, of course, with the taxpayers' money. So I work with the Swedish Program for Democracy and Human Rights. That includes digital rights.
Oke. Jadi Frederick ini dari SIDA. SIDA ini Swedish International
Development
Agency yang langsung bekerja dengan pemerintah Swedia memanfaatkan dana pajak untuk agenda pembangunan internasional. Wah, di sana mah pajaknya dipakai buat
internasional ya, bagi-bagi ke negara lain.
Kok
gitu.
Bisa ya?
Hebat banget ya. Di sini bayar pajak aja kita masih lupa ya kan.
Masih iya, malah ada yang nggak bayar pajak.
Lapor pajak lupa.
We are very impressed that in your country tax money can be allocated for development
for other countries.
International development programs. In our context it can be very challenging.
It's our honor.
Nah, mungkin sebagai awal Mbak Astari dulu memperkenalkan diri, terus kasih tahu sebetulnya kalau di Indonesia tuh IGF tuh apa dan ngapain ya?
Iya betul. Mungkin ada teman-teman yang belum pernah dengar sama sekali gitu kan ya. Monggo Mbak Astari.
Oke, terima kasih Mas Gustaf. Jadi tadi seperti yang saya udah sebutin, IGF Indonesia itu ruang lingkupnya memang di Indonesia, meskipun kita juga bekerja sama dengan IGF lain di seluruh dunia, karena kan ini kan di bawahnya PBB. Tapi tadi kan Mas Gustaf bilang wakilnya PBB, enggak juga, karena kalau yang di Indonesia ya tentu saja tidak berhubungan langsung, kita tidak dekat dengan PBB. Kegiatannya IGF itu sesuai dengan namanya terkait dengan pengelolaan pengelolaan internet di Indonesia. Jadi karena tata internet itu sendiri adalah sesuatu hal yang kompleks, membutuhkan banyak stakeholder kan, makanya di IGF sendiri itu terdiri dari berbagai stakeholder, makanya multi stakeholder. Nah, kemudian kegiatan kita apa saja ya? Yang paling rutin kita lakukan tiap tahun adalah melakukan dialog nasional untuk memberikan rekomendasi kepada pemerintah bagaimana mengelola internet di Indonesia, seperti itu dialog nasional kemudian yang rutin. Dan IGF Global kan tiap tahun juga melakukan meeting kan. Nah, jadi hasil dari dialog nasional yang kita buat di Indonesia itu kita submit juga di
IGF itu ada forum multi stakeholdernya gitu.
Iya, betul. Jadi IGF sendiri memang terdiri dari perwakilan stakeholder. Jadi dari government, kemudian dari LSM, maksudnya jadi
masyarakat sipil.
Ya, masyarakat sipil, kemudian dari pihak yang ngerti soal teknisi hal-hal yang teknik, kemudian dari government platform
media sosial.
So, Astari is from Indonesia IGF. Even the IGF itself is under the UN, but basically their job is to represent multi-stakeholder group to be acknowledged and to represent as well as to propose recommendations either for governments or other related agencies. And their main task is not only to organize Indonesia IGF every year, but also to facilitate dialogue in between different actors, because internet is a very complex entity, so they have to involve many different agencies, institutions, either from government, civil society, business, including platforms.
Kalau
capek juga ya.
Capek banget. Kalau Mbak Astari sendiri kalau boleh tahu, boleh di-spill ke teman-teman yang lagi tonton gitu ya, berapa banyak partner stakeholders yang sebenarnya sekarang tergabung di IDIGF sendiri?
Kalau di IDIGF,
in numbers.
Kalau kita kan ada namanya yang boardnya gitu kan. Jadi yang mengurusi kegiatan IDIGF tiap 2 tahun sih sebenarnya, kepengurusannya tiap per 2 tahun ya.
Oke.
Kalau di Indonesia yang yang berkait, yang punya jadi ujung tombak.
Yeah.
Aku tadi mau menyebutkan kata yang tepat apa yang jadi ujung tombak itu kan Kemenkominfo. Jadi saat ini kita sedang dalam proses untuk jadi berdiri sendiri gitu loh. Tapi sebelum sudah mulai tahun lalu 2022. Tapi dari 2013 sampai 2022 itu ya masih di bawah bukan di bawah ujung tombaknya Kemenkominfo.
So the caretaker of Indonesia IGF work for 2 years.
Yep.
Previously they work directly under the Ministry of Communications, but in the past few years they started to become more independent organizations. Yeah.
So we make our kita bikin di Kemenkumham tuh menjadi akta perkumpulan gitu jadinya.
Okay, in the Ministry of Human Rights, they registered as association.
Association, yes.
Yeah, association, I think it's in English, perkumpulan. Yeah,
association, yes. As association.
So for you, Frederick, maybe you can give us a brief of introduction.
Yes, I'm very interesting. Why Mr. Frederick is in Indonesia? What actually that you are doing in here?
Yeah. Maybe visiting Bali? No,
because I'm coming from Bali, so maybe no.
No, I didn't visit.
Most of foreigners come to Indonesia
because they want to see Bali.
But now not in your case, yeah.
No, in my case it was West Java.
West Java.
And the rainforest. Actually, we visited a village that is supported.
We actually, Frederick just come back from Ciptaglar village.
Yeah, only yesterday morning. No, yesterday morning. Yes.
Yeah. Yesterday morning from Ciptaglar.
Yes.
Desa Ciptaglar di Jawa Barat.
Di Jawa Barat.
Okay. Yeah. What kind of village is that, and what are you doing actually?
No, it is actually Gustav is the expert. However, I was there for 2 days. We, as Sweden, we support the Locknet project, and the Locknet project is actually providing this village alongside with 9 other villages in remote areas with internet access. Aiming at helping the people to connect the unconnected. And I clearly see that this has a relevance and good results in regards of connecting to other platforms, creating job opportunities. You can take help of internet for education, health services. I was impressed. The first tower was built only 2019, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually saved the village from COVID.
Yeah.
As they could keep themselves updated in all means of COVID information. And they have also developed a disaster warning system, which is also very impressive. So this is a part of our support, and but a part as well of the digital support we work with from SIDA. Basically, we started working with this in the frame of freedom of speech, but I can clearly see that this is cross-cutting. Cross-cutting in all sectors, from private sector development to freedom of speech, health, education, etc.
Jadi Pak Frederick ini datang ke Indonesia untuk kunjungan kerja sebetulnya.
Okay. Bukan liburan ya?
Bukan liburan.
Was I too long?
No.
Okay.
I will translate a bit about what you said. Kunjungan kerja ke Ciptagelar, karena sejak tahun 2019 itu SIDA melalui APC, ini organisasi global, singkatan dari Association for Progressive Communications, itu bekerja sama dengan Kementerian membangun infrastruktur internet di wilayah-wilayah pedesaan dan tempat terpencil, khususnya di Ciptagelar.
Keren banget.
Jadi kemarin kita melakukan kunjungan kerja ke sana untuk melihat langsung, terus dia sangat terkesan karena melalui jaringan internet yang dibangun di sana ternyata bisa membantu warga Ciptagelar untuk mengantisipasi berbagai dampak buruk dari penyebaran pandemi COVID. Terus selain itu juga mereka udah mulai mengembangkan sistem pengurangan risiko bencana. Terus ternyata infrastruktur internet yang dibangun oleh warga di sana berhasil membangun menciptakan lapangan kerja baru dan menambah penghasilan buat anak-anak muda. Jadi sebetulnya upaya membangun infrastruktur internet ini dampaknya bisa macam-macam.
Tadi juga sempat dengar kayaknya bukan cuma Ciptagelar tapi 9 desa lainnya ya.
Ada desa selain di Ciptagelar, ada di Pulau Aceh, ada di Kalimantan Barat itu di Ketembanggungan Tai. Terus di Poliwali Mandar di Sulawesi Barat, terus di Papua, di Ambon, Sumba Tengah, Lombok Utara, Bali dan Jawa Barat.
Jadi kalau teman-teman semua pengen dan penasaran, pengen tahu ini 10 desa termasuk Ciptagelar yang sebenarnya lagi di-develop untuk jaringan internet dan pembangunan infrastruktur, itu bisa cek di mana sih Kang Gustaf?
Mungkin bisa follow Instagramnya Kemenrum_ID.
Kemenrum_ID. Sip, kalau gitu. Is it Indonesia the only country that you join with this program, or there is another country?
No, we have more countries. We have these. This project actually stretches from South America to Southeast Asia in other countries too. Myanmar, for example, we have another country, and this is actually why I made this trip, not only to study this program, but the situation for digital rights and digital security, I want to add. Starting off in Chiang Mai a little bit more than 2 weeks ago, discussing with the Myanmar community, continuing to Bangkok for regional discussions, and then I spent last week in the Philippines discussing with the digital rights networks.
Only for 2 weeks, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah, 2 weeks a long business trip. I think.
It's quite busy, ya?
Quite busy,
Sibuk banget ini keliling.
It was well filled. I met loads of people, and please interrupt me if I'm long, long if you want to translate. I can continue.
Well, Pak Frederick ini bilang selain urusan infrastruktur, ternyata internet ini juga relevan saat kita bicara tentang hak-hak digital, keamanan digital, dan ini semua ternyata bukan kerja yang sederhana ya. Kemarin dalam kunjungan kerjanya dia ke Myanmar,
ke Bangkok
juga, ke Filipina. So what is your impressions in regional context in Southeast Asia, like the freedom of expressions, the digital rights and democracy? Is there any specific?
Yes, as I said, I think digital rights is a cross-cutting issue. It's not only a human right, and I think that's one conclusion. I think as well digital rights is a cross-cutting, including even catastrophe work with disasters, the humanitarian situation. So it's not only a development issue. Like up in Myanmar, we identified the need for ICT in humanitarian situations, which is not the priority today, but it should really be. That's one conclusion, and that it's cross-cutting all over all countries. In all sectors, including indigenous people, and that was a strong impression that indigenous people can really take use of digital rights. As somebody said, it will help them with their cultural identity and put them on the map, actually, to be more visible to others, to governments wanting to take their land, for example, it could be, or influencing them or taking over with the tourist industry or whatever it could be. So it will actually strengthen indigenous villages in many ways. So I think that's one impression.
Jadi hak-hak digital itu mencakup
berbagai banyak hal, cross-cutting gitu ya.
Dia cross-cutting ya, urusan kerja-kerja kemanusiaan, kebencanaan, pemenuhan hak-hak masyarakat adat, keamanan digital dan lain sebagainya. Nah, kalau di IGF itu dibahas
itu
juga
dibahas
berarti,
nggak,
Mbak?
Mbak? Karena Indonesia kan banyak itu masyarakat adat, bahkan beberapa yang justru menolak kehadiran internet ya. Di Bali ada, di Jawa Barat juga ada.
Di Bali
kan?
ada juga
ada,
ya?
tidak boleh ada internet. Itu gimana ya, Mbak Astari?
Kalau isu-isu multi stakeholder gitu kalau di IGF itu MAG ya ininya, forumnya, atau ada forum lain?
MAG itu multi advisory group, jadi dewan ininya lah ya, kayak dewan pengarahnya kalau
dewan pengarahnya, oke.
Jadi kalau yang kita yang bahas sih terkait sama internet juga ada sih
hak-hak digital
dibahas juga dibahas.
Oh, di Indonesia agenda pemenuhan hak digital itu udah sampai mana, Mbak? Keamanan digital, perlindungan data kan kayaknya
lagi hangat-hangatnya sekarang
nih sekarang nih.
Kalau misalnya kita membahas soal pemenuhan warga negara Indonesia terhadap hak digitalnya, mungkin itu jadi pertanyaan yang ini ya krusial juga ya, karena kan maksud krusial tuh karena sampai hari ini kan ketika hak dasar yang lain bukan hak digital itu juga masih belum terjangkau, apalagi hak digital. Jadi hak digitalnya masih, itu kan hal yang baru juga karena internet dan sesuatu yang digital itu kan juga munculnya kan belakangan kan. Maksudnya kan hak digital yang seperti hak hidup, hak yang sandang papan pangan aja itu
basic
kan,
rights ya.
Basic right-nya itu aja kan kita
belum banyak terpenuhi.
Kita sebagai negara yang belum kategorinya belum maju itu kan belum terpenuhi.
Padahal kita
jadi,
udah middle income country ya.
Betul.
Iya.
Menuju kaya.
Menuju kaya tapi
mudah-mudahan kaya beneran.
Menuju kaya tapi masih
mudah-mudahan tercapai kan.
Okay. So in Indonesia the issue of digital rights is kind of a critical issue ya.
Yes, because
apart from the digital rights, we still need to fulfill
the
many basic rights that represent the needs of the people.
So because internet is something new in Indonesia, so I think like a lot of issues that still ongoing out there, but then it's still conflicted with the basic rights that we're still struggling.
And then one conclusion is as well that you and we have met very much in common as we are discussing also digital risks. Of course, there is a high risk if you are in Myanmar, then you risk your life using the internet, although badly needed, in that context. But then there is a risk with this freedom of speech in regards of trolling, fake news, lies being spread on the internet. And this is not only a problem for young democracies, it is a problem for us in Sweden as well. We just went through elections last year and we had exactly the same problems as you have. So this is a global phenomenon that we can really support each other and help each other. And it's not that we have all the knowledge how to mitigate this. We need to listen to you. And maybe we have something to say in this to you too. But then we can only solve this or mitigate it by working together, I would say. We have Swedish trolls too.
Jadi tantangan hak-hak digital itu juga mencakup keamanan digital ya,
dan Swedia pun
juga punya tantangan dan risiko yang nggak jauh beda ya sama kita ya.
Betul, kayak tahun lalu ada pemilu,
ada hoax news, ada disinformasi. Kita juga kalau nggak salah waktu Indonesia IGF tahun lalu juga dibahas ya urusan hoax news, disinformasi dan lain sebagainya itu di IGF Indonesia, Mbak ya? Iya,
jadi kan soal misinformasi ini kan memang udah menjadi topik hangat di Indonesia kan. Kalau kita nyebutnya in Indonesia we call hoax, not misinformation. I mean, jadi kita kan biasanya kan memang kalau untuk masyarakat yang luas kita nyebutnya hoax gitu kan. Hoax itu kan sudah jadi isu yang hangat sejak ada Pilgub 2012, Pilgub DKI Jakarta. Jadi benar seperti yang Pak Fredrik sebutkan tadi bahwa demokrasi kan pemilihan umum itu kan bagian dari demokrasi kan. Pilkada juga bagian dari demokrasi dan risiko-risiko hak-hak digital yang terkait dengan penyebaran berita bohong atau hoax itu memang seiring sejalan dengan peristiwa politik di negara manapun yang nggak
ini urusan global ya ternyata sangnya cuma di sini doang.
Tadi pagi kita sempat ngebahas ini sebenarnya soal masyarakat itu juga harus makin cerdas tapi elit juga makin harus bijaksana.
Iya ya. Sebetulnya yang bikin ribut kan yang di atas ya. Kita sih nggak ikut-ikut ribut tadinya ya.
So for the context for you, Mr. Frederick, that Ibu Astari said that Indonesia also have the same problem with this kind of issue. Sometimes we got this problem in hoax and misinformations during the political time, starting in
2012
on the government Jakarta governor election. So we have this clash for civil.
And 2 years after that,
yes,
national
national
election
yeah,
in
national
2015. Itu
2014, yeah.
2014.
So when it comes to political events, all of this harmful and illicit content somehow happens.
So it's threatening our democracy. I think it's also happening.
Yeah, it's threatening all democracies.
In United States, it's also happening.
Yes.
Every election.
Definitely so, and I think it's extremely important that we have this discussion as we have today, because you know. Also in regards of monitoring and surveillance, for example, which is a super challenge using ICT for people's surveillance. We need to discuss all these things, both on a national level, but on an international level as well, and see what we can do actually with our national legislation or framework, because I think we can't rely only on the international framework for that sake. It is much more complicated than that, and then we all have to discuss and take learnings from each other. Because it's a fine line, you know. We need, for sake of democracy, we need freedom of speech.
Yes.
We need to defend freedom of speech. We don't want to limit it, but we want it to be fair and true. And we don't want fake news. We don't want trolls. We don't want to be manipulated. How to go about it? The discussion has only just started here.
I think the biggest challenge right now is how to define what is truth. Because if we learn, at least from Indonesia, if we learn from the political event, every election, there are usually we divided our society divided into two.
Political
groups. One on the right and one on the left. And then after the election, this group still have fight each other. I mean, they both of them believe that they are right. They
Very
are
true.
right.
Yes.
What they believe is the truth. That's raise a question. So what is the truth? Because the truth in the right group and the definition of the truth in the right group and the left group is different.
Yes.
This why I mention this, because this is one of the basic thing I think to how to solve the problem. Why every election the misinformation always increasing related with the candidate. I think we need a solution from this. I mean, how to make the definition. I mean, can every group, every candidate and their supporter can accept this truth, definition of truth.
In Indonesia, it's getting worse because we are a religion country, so they use this kind of issue to make the horizontal conflict between peoples and citizens. So
jadi ini tantangan yang nggak mudah ya. Berdasarkan keterangan dari Pak Frederick sama Mbak Astari, urusan hoax news, misinformasi, disinformasi, ketika
demokrasi gitu ya.
Urusannya langsung ke politik sebetulnya bisa membahayakan demokrasi karena ternyata penanganannya nggak gampang. Setiap ada konflik terjadi di proses pemilihan, saat proses politiknya selesai, dampaknya berkepanjangan gitu ya. So there is always the aftermath of political polarizations, which is very complicated to solve.
But besides, I'm talking about international legislation and national legislation and not limit freedom of speech. We need to. This is an individual responsibility to become fake news resilient. How do we go about that? This is also a discussion.
Jadi,
am I resilient? I don't know. I hope so.
I hope so too. Like ternyata Justru kuncinya adalah apakah kita
tanggung jawab individu ya itu
individu udah cukup resilient alias kebal terhadap fake news dan false news ini gitu kan.
Ya, dan itu yang susah karena ternyata itu sangat berhubungan sama pendidikan, berhubungan
akses
sama
informasi,
literasi digital, tapi pada prinsipnya kita juga tidak bisa membatasi kebebasan berekspresi karena tadi yang kata Mbak Astari ya, mungkin kebenarannya A tuh bisa diafirmasi juga, yang B juga mungkin benar gitu ya. Jadi dua-duanya juga mungkin punya perspektif yang unik juga, yang benar juga gitu, masing-masing gitu. Terus memoderasi kebenaran itu yang mungkin jadi masalah. Oke.
Mungkin saya mau menambahkan salah satu yang membuat kenapa jadi ada perdebatan soal kebenaran dari dua kelompok, terutama ini kan konteksnya dalam demokrasi ya, demokrasi ketika pemilihan umum. Saya mau fokus ke situ karena kan sekarang ini kan ya udah bertahun-tahun sebenarnya di tiap platform media sosial tuh pasti ada tim moderasi. Nah problemnya di tim moderasi konten ini biasnya tuh biasanya itu cenderung ke salah satu kelompok. Itu yang membuat kelompok yang satu
merasa dirugikan,
menganggap kebenaran, misalnya kan ada stempel ini fake news, ini salah. Kelompok yang satu lagi tuh bilang enggak, salahnya dari mana? Karena mereka tidak mempercayai stempel itu, karena itu dibuat oleh kelompok yang tidak mewakili kelompok mereka. Itu yang saya pantau selama beberapa kali peristiwa politik di Indonesia.
Based on her observations that this polarizations and conflict is triggered also because of the bias perspective. When you do content moderations, sometimes those who do flagging is not really represent both sides. So there are always some people who feel this truth is not really represent what they think and what they understand about realities, and it is always a challenge to make sure that this content moderation, flagging on certain hoax news and disinformation should be represent and can be acknowledged many different opinions, and that is not easy task.
No, and sometimes they're lying, even lying, and if you lie and shout loud enough, people will think it's true.
That's also a big problem.
Okay, that's a big problem.
Some institution in Indonesia also decided we are not doing fact checking but data checking. So they replace fact with data because I asked them, why are you using data checking instead of fact checking? Because in Indonesia, if we try to do fact checking with the government, then when the government said this case is A, then A is a fact. But the thing is, A is not truth. A is a lie. What the government said is a lie. So the group who are doing the data checking, what they do when the government said A, this case is A, they will check with the data, and then they give us the reader and the community the data about A. So this is the trust from the people is increasing with that. Fact and data is different thing.
Ini sulit juga ya. Gue baru ngerti nih. Ternyata fakta sama data tuh beda ya.
Iya makanya betul. Saya pikir dulu fakta itu terbentuk karena data yang relevan.
Padahal belum tentu ya.
Belum tentu ternyata.
I just learned something new that for her data is not really represent the fact, but there is an intention that if we try to understand what is reality, what is the fact, it tends that we look into a data, but actually data is not merely a fact. It can be something else because people might lying.
The point is people might lie, and in Indonesia when the fact checking do the stempel, this is true, this is false. That's a big matter because what the government or the news sources said is not always fact. No, it's a fact, but it's not always a truth. He can lie, and then it's still fact.
The fact is not
the fact.
the fact is not represent the truth.
A fact is not a fact. An A is not an A.
Yeah.
This is actually
really,
this is a topic for the next pod.
yeah.
Fact and
Wow.
data. What
Yeah.
is true?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's discuss.
It's not
I'm
really
on.
easy. That is not really easy task. Yeah.
Maybe one of the example related with the election. Remember during the election, national election, when one of the candidates said that he already won the election.
Okay, yes.
He said like
Ah,
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
Before
fact.
the elections?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah.
Before the...
That is happens in our
Yeah,
elections.
Interesting.
That's one of one of the example.
It also happens in America.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's also happened. It's a fact. It's a fact that the candidate said that. So
Yeah.
we cannot say that it is not true. I mean, it's a fact. If we use the method of fact checking, it's proof. The news sources said like that. The candidate A said that my party won the elections. Yes, but the thing is, the data did not support what he said.
Yes.
So
It's based on the, like the statistic agency that they use during the elections. So if it said they win, so they will declare that they win the election at the time. It happened 2019 in Indonesia. We have two
winners.
two winners in the election.
Wow. Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
that can be very complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
it
is
stirs up the
that's
political
Yeah.
tensions.
Yeah, and then
political
the polarization is getting tense. Yeah.
And it become worse when it integrates with religions.
Yeah.
So it's never been easy.
Yeah.
Ini nggak gampang ya.
Nggak gampang.
Tapi ini kan ada salah satu kerja digital literacy is one of the thing, sesuatu yang mungkin bisa dikembangkan. Pendidikan di satu sisi juga penting karena how about in your case about what is the role of education and digital literacy in order to counter this harmful and unintended impact of internet and digital media for freedom of expression and democracy?
Very quick response. I think education is key. We are not there yet in Sweden. Maybe
see.
you are not there yet, but we should go there and start in an early age with digital literacy, including fact changing. I think the critical thinking is becoming more and more important. So I think there is a heavy demand on the teachers to actually be able to handle this in school, especially for the young people, but for the old people as well, of course.
All people.
So all people.
I see.
So what is
So it should be inclusive.
Inclusive, definitely so, and we need to focus on education.
So
education.
policy and regulation is one side. Education and digital literacy is one. How about the law, like the law system? Is there any needs to improve the legal system in order to anticipate the harmful and unintended impact of internet and digital?
Yeah, I don't know about. I don't know the Indonesian law, but all laws need to. When do we discuss? When do we pass the limit for harassment? When do we pass the limit for threats? What are you able to do in regards of fake news and not? Are you? Should it be allowed to spread false fake news? But we need still to strike the balance and see how don't we limit freedom of expression. So this is a discussion, both a philosophical discussion, a political discussion. It's a legal discussion we need to carry out in society. And maybe definitely so. It is a discussion for the pods like this pod that we should discuss with experts and advocate to the lawmakers so that it would become the best legal system to mitigate this. That was a car passing, I think.
Oh yeah.
Or a motorbike.
Motorbike.
Yeah, motorbike it was. No, but and I think UN has a role to play to actually create a platform for these discussions on an international level. But I think the national level has a plays a significant role, a big responsibility.
Oke, jadi saat kita ngomongin internet dan demokrasi urusannya banyak ya ternyata. Ya? Ada yang urusannya sama kebijakan, regulasi, sistem hukum, pendidikan, literasi digital.
It's a never-ending work actually.
Tapi di IGF kalau gitu setiap tahun topik-topik ini muncul dong, Mbak ya?
Kalau soal topik yang dibahas ya tergantung sama apa ya, keputusan dari MAG gitu, mau membahas topik apa. Biasanya disesuaikan dengan ini sih, dengan yang di global ngomongin.
Tapi
apa.
kalau dari Mbak Astari kan Mbak Astari juga aktif di literasi digital ya.
Iya.
Selama beberapa tahun terakhir ini tantangannya semakin susah atau semakin ini kita masyarakatnya udah makin pinter nih gitu.
Ini tadi malah mau mendapati yang Pak Fredrik soal bagaimana pemilu dengan undang-undangnya, maksudnya dengan seperangkat hukum untuk membuat internet dan demokrasi ini bisa saling sinerginya
gitu ya?
Sinerginya bukan saling menguntungkan gitu loh maksudnya. Nah, kalau dari saya sih melihatnya sampai saat ini di Indonesia undang-undangnya untuk membuat misalnya menurunkan tingkat misinformasi ketika pemilu itu sebenarnya sudah dibuat kan. Undang-undang pemilu kan ada. Kemudian disinkronkan dengan undang-undang ITE. Kemudian PDP sekarang ada, tapi kan PDP tidak terlalu masih nanti kita akan cek di pemilu yang 2024. Tapi yang saya lihat dari undang-undang ini tuh, karena itu undang-undangnya sudah beberapa kali diterapkan dalam pemilu, tapi tingkat misinformasi selalu muncul gitu. Dan bahkan pokoknya tiap pemilu pasti yang misinformasi soal politik itu akan meningkat. Jadi ya memang ya kembali lagi undang-undang peraturan hukum itu biasanya selalu ketinggalan dengan realitas. Jadi tetap saya sepakat banget edukasi itu penting banget, terutama berpikir kritis tadi. Jadi untuk tujuannya supaya kalau misalnya kita bisa menanamkan berpikir kritis terhadap semua kalangan. Kalau konteksnya pemilu ya berarti para pemilih ya. Pemilih kan berarti umur yang 17 tahun ke atas. Sampai manula ya, sampai senior citizen. Itu semua memang harus diedukasi, terutama kalau konteksnya di pemilu dan demokrasi ya ke berpikir kritisnya itu, Mas.
Yeah, based on her observations, apart from legal system and policy, it is actually the reality is that policy and regulations always move slower than realities. And in this regards, your opinion is valid that educations have an important role, in particular to create an ability to have a more reflective and critical thinking when it deals with political issues.
And to create this fake news resilience amongst me, you and all of us. And involve the tech companies, tech industry, platforms.
That is also their role,
and have this ethical discussion with them.
Oke. Jadi perusahaan-perusahaan teknologi juga mesti dilibatkan dalam proses. Kalau di IGF masuk ini perusahaan-perusahaan ini masuk ke dalam platform-platform ini masuk
juga karena itu kan multi stakeholder kan. Jadi dan biasanya setiap pemilu juga dari pemerintah kan pasti juga akan punya kayak semacam badan yang melibatkan juga platform teknologi.
Tapi kan pemerintah biasanya mereflek apa? Pemerintah punya
penyelenggara pemilu ya. Maksudnya
kalau pemerintah tuh bisa netral nggak?
Iya, teorinya
mohon maaf nih aku nanya ya.
Kita sebagai warga negara biasa soalnya
kan kalau konten moderation, isu politik dan lain sebagainya diampu oleh pemerintah. Nah, pertanyaan kita kalau pemerintah bisa netral nggak?
Konten moderation kalau di platform media sosial nggak oleh pemerintah, oleh tim mereka sendiri.
Oh, mereka punya. Tapi kan pemerintah bisa
media sosial punya tim
bisa
moderasi.
punya pengaruh nggak?
Kalau di Indonesia kan ya tugas pemerintah kan sebenarnya regulator ya.
Oke.
Iya kan regulator kan, pemerintah as a regulator.
Tapi kan bisa bikin regulasi yang menguntungkan.
Ya kan tugas pemerintah kan terbentuk karena hasil pemilu. Itu kan mewakili kita semua. Jadi ya tentu saja harusnya mencerminkan kepentingan seluruh rakyat dong.
Kalau gitu kita semua juga harus ikut mengawasi.
Iya. Tapi ini menarik loh Kang Gustaf, karena tadi pagi kita ngobrol-ngobrol sama Mas Ibe yang lagi di Paris UNESCO di Internet for Trust. Dia bilang bahwa ada salah satu influencer yang bilang bahwa dalam sistem moderasi konten itu kita bukannya memberikan tugas tambahan ke platform atau memberikan otoritas yang lebih kepada pemerintah, tapi bagaimana memastikan prosesnya transparan.
Okay, transparency is one of the particular issues that we need to
moderate the content.
For content moderation, because in this in particular, based on her observations, government always have a role. It should be involve many different stakeholders, civil society, corporations, and private sector. But each role has to be transparent in the process.
Transparency is very important to increase the trust of the people.
Yes.
Yeah, trust is one of the pillar of democracy, right? I mean, democracy will be strength. We will have a strong democracy if the trust of the people is also high. The trust with the government, the trust with the. If we talk about the election with the whole system of the election, including the institution who do the election process, like KPU
and Bawaslu, the election agency.
All agencies and institutions involved in the electoral process also should
trusted,
trusted.
So, Mr. Frederick, how is it going in your country, especially when we are talking about this election agency that might be in Indonesia?
You also have the same challenges,
Yeah, we have, like I said, we have the same challenges as you.
Yeah.
We passed elections. We had elections only September last year, and there were absolutely trolls there. There were lies, there were fake news as well. We are still discussing how to mitigate this. This is a debate that is held in the newspapers on opinion pages, but as well debates on television. I would say, but not enough. We need to discuss more. I think you need to discuss this more in school, amongst people in the streets, family and friends. I think this is very important.
Yeah, and there is also another challenge when reality is being constructed by algorithm.
Yes.
That is another thing.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That is another topic,
Yeah.
We have so many problems actually to be discussed. Related
And it
to
is
this
yes.
topic.
Yeah, we can continue for long.
Ini topik yang
Ternyata
pelik dan
topik
memang
internet dan demokrasi itu enggak.
Itu susah. Itu bisa jadi tesis sendiri lah ya.
Iya.
It could be one of the, like this is our global problems actually when we are investing and using
Also
internet.
local problem.
Local, yes. Responsibility paling besar sebenarnya di lokal kan ya.
Justru
yang saling jaga RT RW
gue berantemnya sama UA sendiri. Iya, coba di WhatsApp keluarga yang nyebarin hoax
om tante
kita mau gimana ya?
Dekat dari keluarga.
Iya, is even in our family we have family groups. Then our auntie sends hoax news and we are a bit reluctant to debate because she's older than us. What should we do?
Maybe archive the chat and WhatsApp.
Okay.
Mute them.
The best option, yes. But you say that in Sweden you have this kind of actions that going to schools and providing like digital literacy in school. Can you explain more about that?
I hope
it's
so.
not.
I think it is happening in school, but I think it could be even more. This is also a slow system.
Education system is also slow.
It also can be slow. We need to be very adaptive. So if the law is slow, the educational system a little less slow, hopefully. We need to work in a complementary way and discuss these topics. As for example in this pod. If we give pods in Sweden, we should do that too, because I think an awakening is needed. And in times of conflict, we have a conflict and a war going on in Eastern Europe. People are a bit tired of the situation.
Yes.
And let's not make this a window of opportunity for fake news. Despite you being tired in a conflict situation, we need to discuss these topics really. Because otherwise somebody else will come in and tell you what's the truth.
Ini tantangannya ya.
Betul.
Jadi berita hoax, disinformasi dan misinformasi bisa menyebar sedemikian cepat, tapi kebijakan, regulasi dan sistem pendidikan
agak
itu
lambat.
Sesuatu yang bergerak lambat.
Agak lambat begitu.
It is a risk.
Iya.
Dan apalagi tadi kan dibilang bahwa kita mesti siap-siap berjaga diri sendiri ya.
Sebetulnya itu jadi tanggung jawab individu ya.
Dan tadi kelelahan informasi akibat banyak banget informasi, kita jadi bingung yang mana yang yang benar gitu.
Media fatigue gitu ya.
Media fatigue.
Information tired.
Information
fatigue. Yeah.
In this point, I think this is the important role for CSO, civil society organization to take role when the law is slow and when the education system is also slow, then civil society organization can take a role to educate the people. With their, of course, is limited. I mean, the capability is limited, but we have a lot of social CSO in Indonesia, and I think in Sweden also in other countries. So yeah, if all the civil society work together, then at least it will make the misinformation and disinformation in the next election can be contained. It's still.
Jadi literasi digital dan peningkatan kesadaran warga itu malah justru jadi peluang besar untuk mendorong pelibatan komunitas, masyarakat sipil, untuk bisa sama-sama mengingatkan dan menyebarkan informasi yang lebih baik gitu ya.
Tambahannya ada sih media mainstream.
Media and to raise the voice.
Karena media kan setiap problemnya, I think it's also happen in the United States and other Western countries. The media and the businessman is linked, so it's a big problem during the election.
Also politics, business and media.
Yes. So when
and financially interested.
When the election happen, the conglomerate, media conglomerate always they usually has a political tendency to one or two candidate, and then these businessmen who own the media in Indonesia, we have many media conglomerate. They will ask their media to report according to their interest. That's a big problem.
Media massa juga nggak pernah lepas dari bias dan kepentingan itu.
That's my point.
Apalagi kalau misalnya pemilik media ternyata terafiliasi dengan satu dua kandidat atau partai gitu, dan itu banyak terjadi di Indonesia dan juga bahkan negara-negara lain.
In Indonesia, in many cases that there is always a media company or certain individual or group of people that represent the business interests directly or indirectly linked to political parties. So it makes the whole ecosystem is harmful for democracy.
Even the media owner is also the chairman of one of the political parties in Indonesia.
And that problem is global as well.
Okay, that is also the case for Sweden.
Not well, yes, of course, but you know, it's more difficult to see in Sweden. We have a longer time of democracy in Sweden, so it is actually limited. You know, so far, the media owners are told not to interfere in what's in the newspaper, but we don't know what it is to come. What's to come? Really, we have to be careful. We have to protect our democracy. So, because we have a development in the States.
Demokrasi, kebebasan berekspresi itu sesuatu yang penting untuk dipertahankan, tapi pada saat yang bersamaan rentan ya sebetulnya. Sangat rentan. Dia bisa hancur kapan aja gitu.
Betul. Dan kayaknya memang dari kecil harus sudah diajarin
Iya nih anak-anak
Bapak
gitu.
Ibu guru PAUD.
Tapi gue kalau ketemu sama Uwa sama
apa?
Gedak gue kalau misalnya udah di grup WhatsApp tuh. Ya
terus.
gitu, terus kalau misalnya ngasih hoax terus dikasih ayat-ayat suci kan kita jadi nggak bisa ngebantah ya. Bingung kita.
Nah sebenarnya justru itu menurut saya itu justru yang harus diselesaikan, karena kan biasanya kelompok-kelompok seperti itu tidak dimasukkan ke dalam tim moderasi kan. Jadi orang-orang yang punya pandangan tersebut itu kelompok itu harusnya dimasukkan supaya nanti ketika produknya itu yang ketika kita mau memerangi penyebaran hoax di WA group atau di Facebook. Sorry aku nyebut platform, maaf ya. Itu kan ketika kita sebutkan ini loh udah ada stempel hoax dari institusi ini, kelompok itu nggak akan terima karena yang keluar kan ayat-ayat tadi kan. Ya karena kelompok-kelompok itu kan tidak dilibatkan dalam pembuatan stempel-stempel itu. Itu tantangannya di situ.
During the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, this hoax news is everywhere.
Yes.
Even there is even a lot of victim ya. Some friends and relative got infected by the virus because they
they believe in such a hoax, misinformation.
So it totally harmful things. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is a long discussion.
This is unresolved discussion.
Yeah,
we
cannot find the solution here.
Yeah,
but hopefully we can triggers.
Yeah, we hope to expect.
But it was super interesting. I will take with me data and facts. What's true?
Okay.
This is my take.
Okay, ini apa teman-teman
saya puyeng ini sebenarnya.
Podcast Rembuk Nusa edisi kali ini sebetulnya tidak akan membuatkan kesimpulan.
Iya.
Tapi ini diskusi yang akan terus berlanjut. Apalagi kita sedang bersiap-siap menyambut pemilu. Jadi this is a timely correct discussion somehow. And thank you for your coming.
Thank you for having me.
Mbak Astari, terima kasih. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa terus melanjutkan diskusi ini. Terus buat teman-teman juga ini tanggung jawab kita nih sama-sama untuk membangun netizen yang lebih cerdas, yang bisa berpikir kritis supaya tidak ada dampak-dampak buruk.
Iya, saya senang sekali hari ini ICT Watch saya sebagai asisten beliau begitu ya, dapat belajar banyak dan sekaligus jadi mikir.
Ini ternyata serius ya. Kemarin kita cuma ketawa-ketawa doang ya. Oke sih.
Terima kasih sekali.